Hi, everybody. So we're back again for another Thursday Night Live with the Australian Professionals of Color. And this time we have a very special guest with us. We have Mr. Shankar Raman. And I'll give a quick introduction about Shankar very quickly, but I just wanted to say hello, and we're seeing you after a fortnight. So I hope you're all keeping well. And, you know, with the lockdowns now starting to ease a bit from tomorrow in Melbourne, I hope you're feeling a bit of relief. And so just welcome to the live once again. Viniti is here as well, and Shankar. So maybe I'll just give you both a chance to say hi, and then we can go into a bit of introduction about Shankar and the questions. Viniti, do you want to go?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Hi, Shankar, and hi, everybody on the call. And I want to really, very honestly, be very thankful to Shankar to come on to our exclusive group and share your, worth of knowledge that you have gained over the years, and help the members in this group to learn from your experiences and your stories today. So, hello, everybody, and welcome, Shankar. Do you want to say hello to everybody as well?
Hello, everyone, and it's an absolute honor to be here and share whatever I can with this group. So entirely looking forward to you probing questions of me.
100%, Shankar, you can expect that. So just a bit of introduction. So Shankar is a very dear friend of mine, also an ex-colleague from ANZ Bank. Shankar at one point in time was also my line manager and one of the best leaders I've worked with in my career. So I thought it was just appropriate to bring him on and talk to us about the leadership challenges we face as professionals of color, because he's seen it all in his long span of 40 years of working in the corporate sector and predominantly in banking. So Shankar's worked across India, Bahrain, New Zealand, and Australia, and extensively in the banking sector, like I mentioned. So he's seen a lot in that sector and in that industry. But also Shankar is somebody who got into leadership roles very early in his career, at the age of 24, and you'll hear a bit about that in the stories that he's going to tell us. But it's very inspiring to see someone like that who's been thrust into leadership so early on, and the journey he's had with his leadership career throughout the remaining years of his career. So we'll explore that a little bit today with Shankar, and we've got some interesting questions that have come from many of you as well, that we will ask Shankar, and the chat is open for this live today. So please feel free to ask any questions you have in the comments section, because we will cover those off with Shankar as well. It's a great opportunity for everybody to pick Shankar's brain around this, and especially because Shankar now, after finishing up with the corporate sector, has gone into the not-for-profit sector, working for Now and Not Yet Inc., and also is a principal consultant at Strategis Australia. So it's been a nice change from the corporate sector, I guess, for you, Shankar. But I think we'll go into your story. So before I sort of spell out all about your journey, I think it'll be great for us to hear about your journey with leadership, and how you started, and how you went into that whole space.
Sure. Thanks for the build-up. It's really
pressure's on you now.
Pressure's on me. So I started work in 1981. Yes, so it tells you how long it's been. So with a company in India called Ambalal Sarabhai Enterprises, still exists, but the business unit that I used to work in, which was the soaps and detergents unit, folded some years ago, I think, purely due to the kind of intense competition that exists in India. Anyway, I joined them as a management this trainee, and 3 years later, so I joined them around the age of 21, and at 24, I was made the regional administrative officer. So it was quite a bit of a unexpected surprise and a steep learning curve, because you're having to understand how to assume a different role, different sets of responsibilities. And I'll use the word stakeholders. It's a bit of a cliche, but different set of stakeholders, such as the bankers who would want to come and see you, the auditors who would want to come and see you, and also people who were either your colleagues or even your juniors or your seniors now suddenly having to report to you, and in an environment such as India, which is reasonably tricky. And remember, wind the clock back to 1983, 84. So it's a very different India that we know of today. But I survived. And then from there, I went to, it's interesting. After that initial stint, I went, I started all over again. I wanted to enhance my studies. So I went to Bahrain with KPMG. And that wasn't a leadership role, or that wasn't a managerial role. So I started again. And one of the questions they put to me is, you've been leading a large team. How are you actually going to cope with the fact that you're going to be back? And the words they use, you're going to be back at the bottom of the totem pole. And my response was, I'm looking ahead. I'm not looking at my next role. I'm looking as to what I will gain from this. It's an investment rather than a demotion. And it's an investment I'm choosing to make in myself. I work in a foreign country. I work in a different organization. I'll gain new perspectives, and I'll gain a qualification in fact, I was, one of the expectations was that we study the Chartered Association of Certified Accountants. Then I'll wind the clock forward. From there, went to New Zealand. From New Zealand, came to Australia. Each of these moves was not easy. It was difficult. And it also required sacrifice on my wife's part, who is probably more qualified than I am. And at every stage, so I would not have been able to make these changes if not for that level of support and also confidence that I had in her and she had in herself, that we'd be able to make these changes. So it's important to recognize that nothing happens without sacrifices, and also important to recognize that if you're successful, there may be many people pushing you forward. So I have never ever lost sight of the fact that whatever I've gained and accomplished in life has always been someone somewhere has been smiling at me. Okay, it's easy to think that we have done everything ourselves, and that's one takeaway I want everybody to be aware of. Recognize, so appreciate yourself for your achievements, but also recognize that it's been on the backs and shoulders of others. So one of my first leadership roles in ANZ, by which time I've been to ANZ, was to heading up finance operations. And it's fascinating how some of these roles come to me. And I'm sure there's a question about how do you get a role. I've actually never gone and asked people to give me these roles. This leadership role in ANZ, the guys knew I was good at finance. The guys knew I was good at risk management. I was actually managing risk for this business from a different business unit. And when the incumbent was leaving, she said, Shankar, how come you've not applied for this role? I said, oh, me? Really? Back to your imposter syndrome. He said, yes, you are the best person for this job. I said, listen, I'm not going to apply. If you think I'm good, go speak to the managing director and tell him that you think this guy should get the job. So she did, and I got the gig. And the head of finance said, Shankar, if you are prepared to take on the finance job in addition to this job, then I will recommend you. I said, in for a penny, in for a pound. So I ended up doing two jobs for the price of one. Meaning I was paid only one salary.
Yeah.
So that was one. So the key takeaways from this example are, be prepared to do more than you're asked to do, and back yourself. And sometimes things happen, and when you see an opportunity, grab hold of it. Don't just let it go past you. Then more recently, just before I left ANZ, I became the head of business management for one of the business units within ANZ Institutional. And that was a one-man job. I was the only business manager for a head of business management with no support staff, no nothing, for a business unit that had 450 people. And we set it up from scratch. But I still consider that as a significant leadership role because it required me to adopt all types of skills and strategies, whether it's influencing, negotiating, demonstrating care, empathy, understanding, listening, you name it. I needed to demonstrate all of this because I could have easily said, I'm representing the managing director, please do it. That wouldn't work.
Yeah.
You had to get people to come on to your side, understand things from your perspective, and commit to doing things. In fact, for me, the entire 400 strong business unit was my team, but I didn't have any direct reports. So it was indirect influencing, negotiating that got things. And then I had the opportunity to set up a capability in Bangalore from Australia, set that up. While there was a nominal leader of that function, I was really running everything. The people actually looked up to me. And when the time was right, I just told the managing director, this was a different managing director then, I said, hey, why don't you just give that role to me? I will look after it. Make me the formal head of that. And that was a team. It was zero. From zero, we grew to 60. And I tell you, that's probably one of the most satisfying parts of my journey. And funnily enough, very sad because when I finished up with ANZ on a high. I could not have asked for anything better. So that's a very quick summary of, and I've only given 3 examples of leadership roles, but I thought this should give you the journey that I've spent over my 40 years in corporate life.
Yeah. It's fascinating because, through what you've just explained, it's like you went into leadership roles, then back again, then in again, and then also, so it's not just a linear sort of, climb up the ladder, but it's sort of, it takes that up and down, I suppose. And also in terms of, you touched on sponsorship from people, advocacy for you, like people going in saying, hey, appoint him as, the head of the finance and operations team, or for you going and actually putting up your hand and saying, hey, I want to lead this team in Bangalore. So I suppose it's not one size fits all. And, for different leadership roles, you adapt to different styles or different ways of achieving those roles, right? So I think that's really fascinating.
Correct.
Yeah,
and one of the things I did do, so when I was not managing people or leading teams, I was learning.
Yeah.
Whenever I was what they call an individual contributor in our vernacular here, it's not just that you're sitting there doing your job. You have to, and that's what I did. I invested. So in terms of my, and I'm saying this more for people to take away what they can from what I'm saying rather than talk about myself. But along the way, in addition to my qualifications or education in India, and for those who are on LinkedIn, they can see it, so I won't go into chapter and verse on that. When in Bahrain, I completed a professional qualification. I started a second and a third professional qualification when in Bahrain. I completed the second one there. I came to New Zealand, completed the third professional qualification in New Zealand. Then when I came to Australia, I completed my AICD. So all along the way, you got a series of, call it professional or educational qualifications that one accomplished. And I'm not saying that that's the pathway, but what I'm saying is that I never allowed myself to sit on my backside and I may have been an individual contributor, but I was learning about the business fundamentally. That's what you need. And I was also upskilling myself.
Yeah.
And that's vital. Some of these qualifications were the pathway to getting out of Bahrain to come into New Zealand and then into Australia.
Sure.
Because I had, call it the passport.
Yeah. Yeah.
The professional qualification passport that allowed me to make the transition.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And so in the, in this journey of this ups and downs and different sort of styles that you adopted, if I was to ask you, what are sort of the two key biggest challenges you faced, and especially as a professional of color, were the challenges that you would classify as these were sort of the biggest challenges you faced in your journey?
Mhm. So one of the challenges, and it's probably my nature, I've changed a lot over the years, and I've learned a lot by observing how people conduct themselves and why they do what they do, why some people are successful and why others are not. And I put that down to self-inhibition or being diffident about oneself, um, and not trusting oneself to go out there. Now, let me qualify that by saying it's important to have self-confidence, but it's not beneficial to have arrogance. It's important to look at yourself also from others' eyes. A lot of self-reflection is needed to know if I think I'm bee's knees, am I really? What does somebody else think? And you go and test yourself and find out whether you really are the bee's knees or not. So that's one, which was, I would say, uh, not necessarily held me back, but not advanced me as much as many of the others would have. But then I kept observing how others progressed and what they did and how they capitalized on opportunities and how they went out and grabbed things for them. Okay.
Yeah.
The other one is actually networking. And to be honest, I have to confess, I do not have, even though I feel that I have been fortunate to have accomplished a lot of things, I still don't think I know, so I do not have a wide network of professional relationships. And what I mean by that is I live in Australia, I work in Australia, I am Australian by citizenship now. But when you look at my profile and you look at my contact list and so on, good luck finding a diverse profile. Now, I'm sharing a weakness of myself with you guys so that you can go back and do your homework on your network, and does it look very monotone? Or is it actually got diversity? Whether of gender, whether of color, whether of nationalities, whether of different professions, and so on and so forth. So to me, these were the kinds of challenges, and I do believe that the latter, the network, has been a factor. It's all speculative. Had I had a wider network, would I have accomplished many other things? I don't know. But it's a speculative point to make. But I think it's an important point to make.
And a great one at that too. So just to kind of come back to that. So you believe that as is it specific to the being a professional of color that you believe that these are the two biggest restraints that you have faced, because we as professional of colors are naturally more self-doubting, just way of upbringing and what we have learned through growing. So that, do you believe that to come as a part in your scene, in your management and managing diverse teams, do you feel there is that difference? And same goes with the networking. I mean, do you believe that it's, and because you said, even in your network, you would have monochrome connections. Is it something, do you see a very dominant or a prominent, pullback for professional of color?
Okay, I'm going to give something away. You also need to think about my vintage. Okay. So I think you would have got the message when I said that I started working in 1981. I don't think most of the people in this forum probably were born around that time. Okay. So I am a product of my upbringing and my circumstances, which goes back 6 decades. So there is a bit of that, a fair bit of that. But on the flip side, with each and every journey, with each and every change, I keep observing and I keep observing and I make subtle shifts. I have to be who I am. I cannot suddenly change my character, but being true to myself, I still have to find a way of embracing and being part of today's society and today's way of thinking. So I do think most of the more recent generations are inherently self-confident, more self-confident because they haven't been told no as many times as I would have been told. Okay. So I think that's an advantage, but then use that as your advantage. So that's answers one thing. So I don't want to generalize my example as being true for everyone, but maybe there is some truth in that. And in terms of while I do believe that I have not put myself out there as often, I can guarantee I never ever allowed my color to limit what my potential was. It was never a factor in my way of thinking. In fact, I have grown a lot more after coming to New Zealand and Australia, to be honest. So yeah, I hope that answers that question, Viniti.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So it's a very interesting thing that you have mentioned, because we do see, people talking about self-confidence even now in the group. And before I started the group, I had been to a lot of forums, and I have found that to be the #1 inhibitor for professional of colors even today. So, you might think that, your vintage is the reason, but I think, it's still ongoing. It's an ongoing thing for a lot of professional of colors. And I don't want to say everyone, but, there is still majority of them out there that it inhibits them. And same goes for networking. The importance of networking, I think you've nailed it. It's the next, I think, generation's most powerful element to have growth. All right, back to you, Sangeeta.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. And I think one of the things that we've been speaking about as well, Shankar, is the difference between leadership and management, right? Because, while you've had leadership roles, but a lot of times people confuse the fact that having a title or having the management responsibilities equals to leadership. So in your sort of journey, you've obviously seen all sides of this. What is your thinking around this in terms of leadership versus management?
Thank you. It's fascinating. I mean, I went and did a bit of reading into leadership versus management, and there are as many topics on this as there are people in this universe. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff about leadership and management. I take a particular view towards it, and the way I think about it is, first of all, let's talk about role. You mentioned a leadership role. I actually distinguish between a role and the practice of leadership. So some roles naturally, inherently give you the opportunity to demonstrate leadership. But being in a leadership role does not always mean that you are a leader or you have leadership qualities. And you just have to look around, even within each of our organizations, within each of our political spectrum, you have so many self-anointed or appointed leaders, but are they truly demonstrating leadership? I don't want anybody to answer that question. I just want us to reflect on it.
Oh, we want to.
Okay. Okay. And we can be here forever. But
Yeah, no.
for me, my definition of leadership is that for me, leadership is a quality, it's an attribute, it's the way you conduct yourself. All of these that you bring to bear in a role, in a calling, at your home, in the supermarket, anywhere, you bring this to bear to inspire others, to get the best out of others. And guess what? This is my first. Sometimes you have to actually use these qualities on yourself, because when we are feeling down and out, you instill the same qualities in yourself to pull you up from your despondency or whatever it is. So to me, leadership is so management is an activity, is a role, is a task. You manage things, you manage processes, you manage people. But when managing, you actually adopt leadership practices. You could be selling, you could be leading people, you could be strategizing, but in all of this, leadership to me is the undercurrent that underpins all of your activities. I mean, some other things I thought of. When you're managing people, you expect people to follow your orders, but in leadership, they follow you. Not because you're the Pied Piper and playing the tune, they follow you because they believe in you. Now, that can only come if you're a believable person. And it can only come if you are a genuine person. People won't follow you till the other end of the universe if they don't believe in you. Now,
Shankar, I have an interesting question there. Because we've worked together and I've seen you, lead people and lead teams and things like that. I still remember an example that you spoke about when you were leaving ANZ, and around, when you wrote to people that you were leaving, and the number of people that actually flooded your inbox with emails telling you, how they're going to miss you and how they really wanted to wish you well, and things like that. To me, that in its own sense is followership, right? Like, people in a way looked up to you, and it was you that mattered. It's not your role, it wasn't the title you were carrying. Do you see it the same way? Like, do you see that as a form of followership when you have people who come back to you when you send out an email to them like that?
So 2 points there. First was, I did not expect that level of response. And I also did not realize how much people saw that I had helped them. So what the common theme in all of those messages was how I had helped them either do something different, go and aspire for something else, or just answer a very mundane question of theirs, or give them time, which they would not have got from anybody else. So one was that common thank you for you being who you are, was one message. The other aspect in that was a mental blank. I'm showing my vintage now, so I'm
So while that comes back, there's another question just posted by Indira in a
yeah,
group.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk
okay.
a little bit on that.
Vintage. Breakfast to your vintage.
Yeah. So the answer to that is corporate work culture. Yes, it has evolved. Again, it's about general themes. It was very much hierarchical in those days. It's very much do as I say, not as I do. So, and you wouldn't talk. It seems like what life was at home. You wouldn't talk back, you wouldn't ask questions, you just do what you're told. Okay. A lot of the literature that exists today, and a lot of the, and it was also a very different society in those days. So I think today people are comfortable challenging in the corporate space. Um, but at the heart of it, some of the kinds of politicking that happens, some of the kind of backstabbing, this is universal. As long as you have human beings on this planet, you will have all of these things. Okay? So those things haven't changed. The way you navigate this has changed. Some smarter, some not so smart. Also, there are more choices for people. So a lot of things have changed because today, many of the things that you would do without batting an eyelid have been legislated against in this day and age. You cannot discriminate overtly or covertly. You cannot um, um, uh, um, physically or emotionally abuse people at work. There are lot of material about bullying and harassment and so on. So things have changed. So people know they have rights today in the corporate workspace. Now, not everybody speaks up, but they know that they can speak up, or they should know that they can speak up. Again, when the corporate world varies, cultures are varying. Each and every organization has its own culture, and each and every subset of the organization has its own culture. But the organizational or work ethos has largely changed. Can you imagine me saying I'll work from home in those days? No way. First of all, you couldn't have. Why? My ANZ role, when I first started in New Zealand, my line manager, I had a young daughter. Um, um, I still have a daughter, well, that she's no longer young and she's married. Now, I had to drop her at school and be at work at the dot of 8 o'clock. It was a mad rush. I did that chore while Sunita would leave earlier still. She would leave earlier than I so that she could pick her up in the evening from work because I would work later into the evening. So we had this. But I tell you what, every day I went to work, I was made to feel guilty. Okay, that won't happen today.
Yeah.
I was made to feel guilty every day that I went to work, though all I did was drop my daughter off at school, rush like a headless chook into work, and be there maybe on time or 5 minutes late.
Today, the managers would be made to feel guilty if they expected their subordinates to come before dropping their kids at work. So
and
that's
to be honest, I'm sharing something that I've never shared. I hated it. I even felt that I needed to quit the organization because of that kind of. It wasn't a good place to be. But I stuck it out, and to that person's credit, actually, while he had all these expectations of individuals and what is right and wrong and when you should be and who can speak, he would say, I'm the senior person. So if that other person we are meeting in terms of the business counterpart is the same job level as I am, so you will keep quiet. But to his credit, he actually recognized me for my work and rewarded me by way of promotion, which I didn't see coming. Okay, so fair is fair. He had his views, he had his expectations, but anyway, let me get off that bandwagon now.
It's a very interesting point that you touched there, and I hear that a lot, even when I do my coaching, is around professionals of color specifically, even though they can feel it that they are not at the right job and they would not have an opportunity, or they're not feeling something right about it, like you felt that you weren't happy there and you wanted to get off the bandwagon, yet you stuck. So I'm very curious to understand, and that was a different environment then, because every place operated like that, so you didn't have too much of a choice there. But in the environment that we are today, and the dynamics have changed a hell lot, what would you say to those people who know that they are in a position where they possibly won't have growth, are being taken advantage of, possibly not even getting, a proper balance in their life? How do they approach this kind of a situation in today's environment?
Good question. So first of all, I'd say, ask yourself why you're feeling upset. Is your reason for being upset legitimate? Can you meet the situation halfway? Am I the one having unreasonable expectations of what work-life balance should be, and so on and so forth? You do, but let's acknowledge that at some level there will always be bias. There will always, some of these things are systemic. But before we rail and rant against this, let's first understand and do a deep self-reflection on, okay, what is important to me? Is it possible for me to have a conversation with this individual? Can I sound out other people on how they're dealing with it? Because this is a fact. Every organization, if to date, you have these situations where you are stuck with a wrong type of manager who is not good for the quality of your life and your well-being, mental well-being. Remember, there's a very, very fabulous saying: people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. Okay, so I always ask myself, am I the kind of person that people want to run away from as a manager or as a leader? Okay, I've always thought about it. I always ask myself that question. So me as an employee, what I would say is, do that homework, understand why it is that you're feeling this way, and see what you can do about it in your setting, whether you can have a conversation, whether you can talk to somebody else who can in turn influence. If the answers to all of this is no, 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 then you already know the answer. This is not the place for you. But I would say never leave without a fight. When I say fight, I don't mean going and hammer and tongs at the individual, without fighting for yourself and trying to figure out how you can make it work. Because there are times when we have to leave a situation, but running away from a situation without trying to get to the bottom of it and trying to find a solution is not going to help us for the next job and the next job and the next, because this might keep following you around because you have never tackled the root cause of this one. And the root cause might be the conversation. If you never have the conversation, if you never have the confrontation, you will never know why it is that that person is behaving in this manner. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think that's one of the best I think way to deal with a situation when you are not happy. I think I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Remember, we all have a choice. We all have a choice. And at times, guess what? We should exercise it.
Well, I look at it this way. I'm out the door anyways. I might as well, get it off my shoulder before I walk out. And often people focus on and don't take that action because they worry about what's the worst outcome. And my approach to that is, what's the best outcome? What if this person actually listens to me and thinks,
exactly.
we build a better relationship? When so I focus on that. So I totally agree. I mean, conversation can kind of change a lot of outcomes.
It takes courage to do that. So, it's definitely one of those things that you have to spend a bit of time reflecting on, having those right conversations for sure. Just a quick reminder to everybody who's listening in, do drop your comments in the comments section. We will be asking Shankar some comments. We have him for some more time. So please feel free to ask any further questions you have in here. The one that I have for you, Shankar, is as a leader and having spent time in many different countries and cultures, and also then working with different mixed cultural teams, where you've had people from many different walks of life and many different cultures within the same team. You as a leader, like very often in this group, I suppose we talk about, how we can become better leaders and how we can, lead better. But on the other hand, you as a leader, how do you find what has your strategy been in managing cross-cultural teams? And have you had any sort of challenges there or any sort of insights there when you've worked with cross-cultural teams, and how different cultures, I suppose, behave when it comes to a team setting?
There's an expression saying that it's called cultural competence. And what that means is that as a leader, there's a difference between political correctness and cultural competence. So political correctness is ticking the box and being seen to be fair to everybody and so on. People will see through that very quickly. Okay, but the point about cultural competence is self-awareness, questioning, listening, creating. So when you're talking multicultural teams and so on, creating accountability, showing that you hold yourself accountable, leading by example, showing empathy. So these kinds of being present and demonstrating that you are not merely focused on the task, but you're focused on the whole of the team, and being clear on accountabilities is one part. Then the other thing is engendering and building trust and the concept of safety. People should feel safe to come and represent their issues to you without fear that you will take advantage of them and ping them at a future date. Now, that's the leader's responsibility. Again, one of my favorite quotations is that trust comes on this tortoise and leaves on a horseback. It takes a long time to build trust, but one blemish, bang, you are no longer going to be trusted. Okay, so as a leader, it's important to show that authenticity and be consistent in your dealings. Then the other expression I tend to use is that, and this is a sporting analogy, play the ball, not the person. Focus on what organizational objective needs to be solved and who is the best person to deal with it and how people can come together to solve it, rather than play favorites one over the other and so on. People will work for you and work with you up to a point. And while some people may not, if this is the kind of behavior one has of playing favorites and being deceitful and so on, you will of course achieve some things for a point and up to some time. But your good people will leave you because they will find other avenues, or they will not be engaged. They may still be there physically, but not mentally. And then you might say, I have no staff to know. Look, all my people are there. It's just that it's a slow fuse. That staff person who's there because they have no other option, one day they will get an option and they're out the door before you can say cultural competence. Okay, so on the topic of, I was thinking of something else. It's about do the right thing. If you constantly focus on the right way of doing things, you're not going to be, and if the action that is required is the right for the right thing, you are going to find that people come and embrace your way of thinking. Hope that helps.
Yeah. And in the sort of multicultural teams, I suppose you've seen, and where you've also had professionals of color, is there something that you would like to sort of point out, or just sort of advise professionals of color to do more of or do better, when they are in teams of cross-cultural competencies, or where they've got to think about cultural competencies? There's something that they can do more effectively than you've seen them doing today in your experience?
It's probably what every leader should be doing, which is okay. When you go to make this presentation or you're talking to a group, you have to first understand your audience, right? Because you got to pitch to the audience. So using that analogy, you got to understand your team, know what motivates one versus the other, get to know them. Now, you don't have to be their best friend. In fact, you cannot be their best friend. You should not be their best friend. But you can be the best shoulder they can lean on to cry on. Okay, the safety concept. So know the game, know the people, know what motivates them, invest in all of this. Then guess what? The cultural differences fall away, because all you're doing is that you're dealing with each person as an individual in a manner that they want you to deal with them, but without crossing the professional boundary. Because as a leader, you have to make tough decisions. You have to make difficult decisions. You have to make decisions. Sitting on the fence will only give you veggie. Okay, that's it. So no point sitting on a fence. So, and if you are a leader and trying to be friendly to everyone, you're going to disappoint yourself. You're going to disappoint that individual because you will be making false promises to people. So we need to have the confidence to know that we are doing the right thing. Then all these other nuances fall away, because it's very easy, and that's my experience, it's very easy to be decisive if you know why you're doing something. Now, it may turn out, at the benefit of hindsight, to have been wrong, but at that point in time, at the present moment, it was the right.
That was your Siri.
I don't know.
She didn't understand that.
She didn't understand that. What did I say? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so at that point in time, it was the right decision. History may prove it to be otherwise. That's all right. You learn from it then at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. And Viniti, do you have any further questions on that piece? Because I think I'm itching to ask one very curly question.
Let me go and take a shot at this one. I suppose, and we briefly touched upon this in our offline discussion as well, Shankar. And I've had conversations about as a leader, when you see professional of colors in your team versus non-professional professionals of color in your team. What do you observe to be the key attributes or characteristics that stand out for you in terms of providing support to each other within your team?
Sorry, you have to run that past me once again.
Okay, so I'm curious to understand the difference between your team. So I'm going to give you a scenario here to kind of get this clear. So you've got a team of about 15 people who are working with you, and you've got almost 50% of professional of colors versus non-color people. And we usually tend to see that, we try to flock together with the people who look like us, and, feel comfortable with. But there are certain characteristics of supporting each other when a position, let's say a position of leadership came through, and that from your position downwards who's the right fit for it, and you went around and you asked your team. What my personal observation, it has happened that if somebody is really good, and generally who's really good in your team. Right, within the team also, who's very good. When it is a non-colored professional, they would support them to go up and apply, say go. But the moment it comes within the professional of colors, there seems to be a little bit of, I suppose, politics going on there, just to not provide that much of support or pull each other down. Is that something that you have seen in or experience, or you feel that happens here?
No, I haven't seen it. Again, by keeping in mind that, so I have to phrase it within I work for a large organization, ANZ. If there is any sabotaging, let me assure you, it happens irrespective of color.
Good to know that.
Not if there's any sabotaging, when there's any sabotaging, it happens.
Yeah, there's always a sabotaging.
So when there is sabotage, it happens. So in my work experience, and I have to speak of my recent experience. We are also living here in Australia. I haven't seen that. But then, when you think about diversity here, I think it's probably still fair to say that the representation, I'm really going out on a limb here. I don't know whether the industry I was in was as diverse as the population of Australia is, not from a gender point of view, from a other than gender point of view. Okay. Now that's not because that we aren't going. That the organization is exhibiting unconscious bias. It is because of the nature of the roles. So when you go to a services industry, or when you go, it's very easy to typecast and say there are some professions, there are some industries that attract a particular skill set or a particular demographic. Now, it might look like it's skewed, but that's the nature of the industry. So it's a roundabout answer. I haven't seen this level of positive discrimination, or let's say a leader who is a person of color or a colleague pulling down another person of color. Now, I do have to say, quite often we imagine, wrong choice of words. When you go around looking for an itch to scratch, you will find an itch to scratch. Okay? There are times when we should say, right, and this goes back to the self-reflection. Not some of these perceived slights are just that, perceived, because we've not had the conversation, we've not challenged the status quo, we've not gone and asked the person, did you leave me out because I'm a person of color? Or nor have we asked, help me understand. I mean, you shouldn't be asking that question. You should be saying, and I love this style of questioning, help me understand why I missed out. You suddenly put them at ease because you're not challenging them. You're just asking them to explain to you why you missed out, and listen to them. So I'm saying, because the more we go in with the belief that we have been guarded by the system, we will perpetuate that belief. The more you go in saying, listen, I'm going to give that person the benefit of doubt. Please help me understand why I missed out. You have a conversation. You're no longer having a fight. So instead of a debate or a diatribe or a discourse, it becomes a dialogue. By the way, I've just very quickly explained the 4 Ds of a conversation.
Shankar, I have this quali one for you, and this is to do, as always, but this is more to do with bias, right? And again, very similar on the lines of something that Viniti was asking, but this is more on the flip side of it. So we all have biases, and they're usually quite inherent biases that we carry with us through our own life experiences and through our own sort of the way we've seen the world. And I suppose my question is, have you caught yourself with your, with the self-reflection that you do, have you caught yourself being biased at any point in time? And how do you as a leader then deal with your own biases?
Of course, I have said, why am I doing that? And why am I? And see, sometimes you trust some people more than, not because you distrust the others, but because you have established a rapport, you have a track record, or that person has a track record. And so you have a positive bias towards, remember I mentioned playing favorites? It's a fine line between trusting somebody and giving a task to someone who you know will deliver versus playing favorites. The thing is, for the person who misses out, it will be seen as playing favorites. And for the person who gets the gig, they'll say, great, my boss actually trusts me. Now it's up to me to figure out what was in my head. Was I playing favorite, or was I actually making an informed decision when I decided to give that assignment to you, Sangeeta, or to you, Viniti, or to John? And I think it's important for us to be very, very clear as to why it is that because then guess what? If that person follows my advice and comes and confronts me saying, please help me understand why I missed out, I need to have a convincing answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's important to be clear in your own mind about the decision you make. And if you are indeed making a biased decision, be honest enough to recognize it.
Yeah, and that was my other follow-up question was really, has anyone challenged you on your biases? And, as we as professionals of color, to your point earlier, go and ask that question of, why do you think I missed out, or things like that. But in terms of, people actually challenging leaders when they feel like there's been a bias, how do you as a leader then respond to something like that?
Okay. In terms of answering what was I probably can pull a fast one on you, Sangeeta, and ask you, given that you worked with me and reported to me, whether I have demonstrated such bias. I don't know whether you want to put yourself on the spot here.
It's putting you on the spot, by the way.
Well, I'm just enjoying you both putting each other on the spot. I want to know.
So, but what I would, so rather than answer that question, I'll answer it. So what I have done, and what this is one of the reasons, and I did feel as towards the latter stages of my career, people saw me as a trusted advisor. So they would come to me with, for whatever issues they wanted solved, which allowed me to also call out such biases, but in a non-threatening manner. One of the things I made it a mission, it became my own personal value statement. And I said it's about integrity. I would never humiliate. No, I'd never call out. If something was wrong, and it was a personal conversation I needed to have, I would have that conversation with that person, even if whether they're my senior or junior or peer level. I did not have any qualms about challenging anyone at any level, but I'd go and have the conversation with them in private. I need to talk to you. This is what happened. This is how it would have been perceived. Do you want to have a think about it? But this level of space that was given to me only came because people trusted me to be unbiased. So I think we need to be able to build our credentials to a level where we can have these conversations, irrespective of job level. Because the level becomes irrelevant, going back to doing the right thing. When you know your values are right and when the principles are right and why you're asking the question is right, the manner in which you challenge needs to be also right. You just can't go and mouth off. You need to be sensible about how you communicate your unhappiness or that you're calling them out, but do it in a manner whereby they don't feel that they have been made a fool of or they have been shown up. Do it with respect.
Yeah.
But do it, because guess what? More often than not, they will actually thank you for it. And if they don't, you again know the answer. That's not a person you want to be dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. Great points. I know we can go on forever because Shankar, you and I can can talk forever. But just in the interest of time, the last piece that I would like you to comment on is if there were 3 pieces of advice that you would want to leave the professionals of color with tonight, what would those be?
We've covered a few of this, but so it'll be more like a recap, so I'll go over it quickly. One was build your network. Go and look at, let's say you're on LinkedIn, go and look at your LinkedIn profile and see what demographic is represented. And if there's a gaps, now don't go out rushing out, and it's not like you're collecting award points or so on and suddenly add 500 contacts. No, that's not at all. That is useless. Go and figure out what is it that we can do to diversify our network. It means a lot of investment of time, of thinking, of energy, and you systematically do it. It needs to be diverse from an industry representation, from a demographic representation, from a gender. It needs to be everything, because you will only benefit by having diversity in your thinking and in your network. So that's one. The second is, if you want to break the rules, you need to first master the rules. So be knowledgeable, be curious, constantly learn, master your subject. For heaven's sake, listen and read widely. And most important, if you're reading about or seeing one perspective, go intentionally seek out the opposite perspective. Okay, if you're reading a liberal view, go and read a labor view, to use a political analogy, because the answer lies somewhere in between. But get those 2 views. You decide. You don't just follow your bias and say, if you have leaning towards a particular, so do that. Because the more you arm yourself with diversity of perspective here, and the more you arm yourself with understanding your business, understanding your field of work, whatever it is, you will be successful. It will come to you. Then step out of your comfort zone. If there is a gig going, go and ask for it. If it's not there, say, I'm interested in this. What do I need to do to be successful in that? Maybe you may think I'm not ready now, but when it comes up next time, will you consider me? I mean, opportunities come past us. Most of us watch them go like this. Once in a way, reach out and grab it. What's the worst that can happen? And I use my Qantas club analogy. One of these days I was traveling and I was traveling by a different airline, and it was a long flight, long delay. And I had this Qantas Club membership, and I said, so my friend said, no, you're not going to get in. They won't allow you in because you're not traveling. I said, listen, what's the worst that can happen? If I don't go and ask them, I'm going to be outside here in the main lounge or in the main airport. If I go and ask them and they chuck me out, I'm still going to be here. Well, they did chuck me out. Okay. So, the worst case was that the best case was I would be admitted.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that go on and take on challenge. I gave a couple of examples. Many of the roles that I got happened because I did multiple jobs. I had a day job and I did another role. There was once, and Sangeeta, you know this, I was doing 3 roles. The other advice I would give, if you want to be a leader, think like a leader, act like a leader right now. Be today what you want to be tomorrow. Conduct yourself in a manner whereby people say, they then start noticing you for the right reasons, by the way, not because you're a jerk. So if you want the next gig, start doing things that are part of the next gig. Because one day that person may be on sick leave or may take a career break and you're already there because you've got experience. So that's the other advice I would give. The other one is personal. Professionalism, integrity, values-based. You got to determine what is it for you, but maintain those standards. Come hell or high water, don't slacken on, because you are going to be looked up by people. You're going to be looked at by people. You're going to be noticed. And if you have inconsistent values and standards and that are not in sync with what is expected, then yeah, you may get that leadership role, but you won't be a leader. You won't be respected. And the last one, again, we touched upon it, self-reflection. Everything is connected. If you think that the world is being unjust towards you, go back and think about what you can do to change that world that you live in. Now, if after trying it's not going to change, go to another place. Which means back to knowledge, learning, mastery, etc. You can demand another job if you've mastered everything. And finally, I would say, have at least one hobby. This has got nothing to do with leadership, but it gives you an escape. Have a hobby, have an interest, do something else. If nothing, go for a run. Whatever it is, have another hobby or 2. And one of the reasons I'm so happy in my skin outside of work, now that I've stopped working full-time for an organization, is because of my hobbies and my interests. There's so many of them. I have no time to be thinking negative thoughts, 0 time. I'm so full of stuff buzzing around. Happy thoughts.
I definitely see the difference because I've seen you in the corporate, and I've now seen you after you've left the corporate, and I definitely see the difference. So that's all from me, Viniti, unless you have any other questions.
No, I think I'm good. Yes, just conscious of time, and thank you for all those who are still sticking by. So it's been great to see so many of you watching us, and really very grateful for Shankar. And we've got to get you back here because we need to share your Bahrain story. I think that was a very inspiring one. We missed out on that today, but we would probably invite you again to share, one of those. But other than that, thank you so much. It's been a very interesting and liberating conversation to learn so much in such a short period of time. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shankar.
No, and I hope I didn't bore people to tears with my comments, so that's fine.
People are going to come back and use this as a reference to overcome some of their barriers. I can assure you that. At least I'm going to come back and watch it tomorrow again.
Yeah. And I'm more than happy for people to reach out to me if they've got questions, and I'll try answering them, helping them in whatever little way I can.
Yeah. And make sure that you do it in LinkedIn, because Shankar is not very active on Facebook. So I suppose reach out to Shankar on LinkedIn.
That's right. Good point. Good point.
I was just about to say, Shankar's actually joined us on the LinkedIn Facebook group. Like, he shut down his LinkedIn, I think, a few years ago, and then your Facebook. He shut down his Facebook a few years ago, and he'd specially switched it back on for this conversation and just to be in this group with us. So thank you so much, Shankar. Really grateful for your time, your insights, and also taking the time to share all your thoughts with the professionals of color. I think it really helps people to see someone who's had this long journey in leadership, just to sort of understand where the different kinds of things that you can do to get into the leadership sort of space. So thank you so much for all your wisdom, and I hope people can reach out to you and learn more from you. So Shankar's been very kind to offer help, mentorship for anybody who would like to reach out to him. So please do. And as always, we will catch you again with another very interesting live, again, still on leadership, and we will talk about some different kind of leadership challenges in a fortnight from now with our next guest, which we will reveal a bit more about in the coming days. You'll see a lot more of information coming through about him. His name is Ram Pattabhiraman. He's from Sydney and also has been in the leadership space for over 20 years now, I think. So you'll get to hear from him. He's one of Australia's leading change and transformation leaders. So we look forward to seeing you back again in a fortnight. Hope you have a great night and a great 2 weeks with the new freedoms in Melbourne. And see you guys. see you all soon. Have a great night, everyone.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.